Okay.
Well, good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. Can you hear me? Okay, just wave your hand if we can. We got to really get close to these microphones to make them work. My name is Dan Sherman, the editor of the Green Valley News and the Sahuarita Sun, and welcome to our candidate forum for Legislative District 2. We've got 4 of the 6 candidates here. Not present are Andrea D'Alessandro and Daniel Hernandez, who are Democrats. She is running for Senate. He is running for House. They are both incumbents. Joining me is Manuel Coppola. He's the publisher of the Nogales International and Director of Legislative Affairs for WIC Communications, which is our parent company. The Nogales International, the Sahuarita Sun, and Green Valley News are sponsoring this. Our publisher,
There you go.
how's that? Boy, you really have to be on these things. Our publisher, Drew Sanchez, is around somewhere. We'll have her wave when she gets here. I want to thank Rancho Resort for the room. We've had many forums here, and it's a great location, and they do terrific. We are live streaming this on our newspaper websites, and it will be there forever. Or until the election's over. Sometimes it feels like that's forever. The ground rules. Opening statements, 90 seconds. Questions, you have a 90-second response, 1 minute for follow-up if needed. We're not going to have any closing statements, and we expect to go about 75 minutes. The candidates, I'm sure, will stick around and talk to you afterward. There's literature on the tables, including an election section that we published today in the newspaper, and as an added bonus, right in the middle of it is our home and garden section. We're not sure how I got there, but it's wonderful. You should read it. So, for our audience, Legislative District 2 stretches from Tucson down to Nogales. It includes Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, the city of South Tucson, southern part of Tucson, Green Valley, Sahuarita, and all of Santa Cruz County, Rio Rico, Vaca, so it goes all the way down there. So we are going to go ahead and get started, and Shelley Keiss, who is a candidate, Republican candidate for State Senate, will start us off, and then we'll just head on down the line with the 90-second opening statements. David here up front is your timer. He'll give you a little warning, and then his phone will go off and humiliate you, probably. So don't want that to happen. Obey the timekeeper. Shelley, go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Ma'am, would you like to go ahead and lead us? Go right ahead.
And for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that reminder. Shelley, go right ahead.
Well, good evening. My name is Shelley Keiss, and I generally don't need a microphone, so if it's too loud, please let me know. I am running for the Arizona State Senate because I love my home. I love my neighbors. I love the communities, and I want to represent you because I have some very serious concerns that I hope to share with you tonight. Concerns about our water, concerns about our IOI, concerns about our ability to make sure that our communities are safe. I have concerns about poverty and joblessness, and I have great joys that I want to share with you tonight as well about all the wonderful things that we see in our community, from the excitement of those who live right here in Green Valley, to the wonderful airmen that serve our community at Davis-Monthan and the 162nd, and to our produce that bring all that lovely produce across the border to us. This is a district that is very diverse. It requires someone with a skilled set of strategic vision. I have that vision, and tonight I'm going to be asking for your endorsement. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Seisman. I am a candidate for State House of Representatives for District 2. We are in District 2. I'm an Eagle Scout, I am an engineer. I have never been in an elected office, however, I have participated in several bills. One of the ones that is profound in my experiences is HB 2050, which is a modification to ARS 41-1034, which is a constitutional bill. Now, the reason why I was so passionate about writing a bill that protects your constitutional rights, your liberty, is because I was an orphan in India, and I did not have the experience or the opportunity to be blessed by what I received when I came to America. Obviously, I became an Eagle Scout. I worked for a DoD contractor. I have an electrical engineering background, but that analytical problem-solving viewpoint is what went into the writing of the HB 2050. Now, what I always tell everybody when I go door to door, I express the desires of solving problems. So I always ask, what are the issues that you're dealing with? What can I do by way of House bill to be able to help solve the problem? It ranges everywhere. It ranges from school funding, small businesses, and accountability issues as far as the legal system. Is that time's up?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. It's wonderful to be here. I've served as your Arizona State Representative for the last 6 years. And I have to tell you that I've been accused of being a career politician. But I have to say that I'm more of a public servant to all of you. And so, because experience does matter up at the state capitol. And also, what I bring with experience is I'm a past Sahuarita town council member. So when I started serving on the state, at the state house, I was able to bring what the state was actually impacting our municipalities and counties. So that's why I bring effective leadership as well. And I bring integrity. I bring ideas from Southern Arizona to the state capitol. This is what Arizona needs, a little common sense and straight from the heart. And so my relationships that I built with my colleagues from across the aisle and my caucus members is very important to me. And we've had some really good success when we work together. Because if we don't listen to each other, we're not going to get anywhere. So I, not only am I a full-time legislator, but I actually serve on 5 different boards. So I want to give back to my community. I want to continue to do that. And I ask you to re-elect me in November. And thank you very much. My name is Rosanna Gabaldon, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Chris Ackerley. When I'm not politicking, I am a high school physics and math teacher. And so I'm tired of working in a broken system, and that's what motivated me to get into politics. But I'm also a native Southern Arizona, born in Tucson, spent a couple of years in Douglas, and have lived most of my life in Southern Arizona. And so I'm deeply concerned about our communities, and I'm tired of us getting the short end of the policy stick from Phoenix. I had the honor of serving you in 2015 and 16. When my son asked me why I wanted to do this again, the answer was pretty simple. Because sometimes you get to make a difference. And when I served you in 2015 and 16, I was able to do that. I stand here as one of the only representative from the district, past or present, who has been able, from Legislative District 2, to get a bill to the governor's desk and get it signed. Did I solve world hunger? No. Did I bring about social harmony? No. Did I create world peace? No. But I did make the lives, the jobs, and the communities of Southern Arizona, the constituents that I represented, a little bit better for having been. So I humbly ask for your vote so that I can have the opportunity to go back and do it again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And if you haven't figured it out, the 3 candidates at that table are running for House, and Shelley Tice is the candidate for the Senate. We're going to give them all the same questions. Anthony, we're going to start with you on this one, and then head to Rosanna and on down. This is about education, which we've had a lot of news in the past year with the teacher walkout in Arizona. Education has taken $1 billion hit to the state budget over about the past decade. Do you want to pump more money into education? We're talking K-12. How much and how specifically can we do that?
Well, I certainly want to support the success of our next generation, our children. Financially, I believe it's going to vary between the districts. Each district has a unique need. And so what I believe though, however, I haven't created any plans as to what we would reduce or modify or be able to adjust to be able to come up with those funds. That will be something that I will need to participate in as far as figuring out where we're going to adjust the budget to be able to compensate for the school funding. I do believe that there needs to be accountability in the school funding. I believe we can't just fight for money and just throw it over the wall and expect the district governing school boards to be accountable. Simply put, the teacher salary issue with what went on in Phoenix is a great concern because there's been no walkouts or concerns being raised at the local governing school board, but yet it went directly to the state legislature on teacher salary. State legislature doesn't necessarily control the teacher salary, that's the responsibility of the local governing board. So it actually is a legislator's responsibility to write an overarching bill to make sure that the districts are accountable with the funds and they make it in the classroom. Thank you.
So if you go to the legislature, Anthony, is this a priority? Education?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you for that question. In regards to public education, this is how I define public education. We start with early childhood development. Then we go to K through 12. Then we go to community colleges, universities, adult ed, JTED, CTE, all the things that we address for lifelong learners. And so when you talk about public education at the Capitol, aren't you tired of being 49th in the country in public education? I am. And as a legislator, I want to see more funding put into public education. And how I see that is looking at those tax loopholes that we continue to do in the state, that we can bring in more revenue into the state to bring it into not only public education, because Arizona does three things: we educate, we medicate, and we incarcerate. So again, funding for public education is important, but we have to look at all the things that we as a state, we fund and we, the state agencies and so on and so forth. So when it comes to public education, realize that Red for Ed, 75,000 individuals came to the state capitol and said, enough is enough. And they were there, and what was wonderful and delightful is that they changed the partisan rhetoric, the dialogue, to being bipartisan, and I'm very hopeful for that.
Hold on. So over the last decade, the funding has been cut roughly $1 billion, and you have been there 6 of the last 10 years. Why did this happen?
Well, in my opinion, when we have to look for cuts, public education is one of the revenues that are cut. Is when we sit there and say we as a state, we meaning us is the state, is that we are continually cutting into public education, and the revenue is not there. We don't replace it. Inflationary. So we're not even to the 2008 levels, Dan, and that is unacceptable.
Well, I see the consequences of our underfunding every day in my classroom and every 2 weeks in my paycheck. And the price tag is staggering. You mentioned $1 billion, which is the deficit between what overall education spending is today and what it was in 2008. But the price tag is more on the order of $2 billion, because what's not included in that is the unmet capital needs that many of our schools have. One of the things that I was frustrated about over this last year was after the legislature finally moved, there's good reason to think that it was prompted by the demonstrations that were held. the fight turned partisan, and that was deeply disturbing to me, both as a teacher and just a citizen of Arizona, that it became so partisan. We have a very complex structure for school funding that would take half hour to just explain the basics of it. But at the core of it, our fundamental underlying structure is broken. So if we're going to fix the problem, and we're going to fix it in a sustainable way, what we have to do is we have to go back and address the basic equalization formula that we use to generate property taxes and align it to what the actual needs are. Until we do that, and we've got to start with developing a clear vision of what, he's buzzing me.
Thank you. Shelley Tice?
So 3 questions, 3 answers. Yes, as much as is fiscally responsible with an eye toward growth, with a sustainable stream, and by beginning to look at a funding formula that was put together when we graduated from high school. Things have changed. So the first question was, would I work toward education? Absolutely. It's 51% of the budget. It's what we do in the legislature. It's the future of our children, which is the future of our businesses. Secondly, how would we do that? Well, we need to go back and we need to look at, first off, what is the fiscal amount that we can sustain? I'm a certified government financial manager. I dig through budgets. I find money and I look to see where it went, why it went there, and I check to make sure that we are being held accountable for what we're spending. So you can count on me doing that. We need a sustainable funding source for education. And finally, again, we need to look at how is it that we set up this formula to fund schools the year many of us graduated from high school.
Okay, thank you. Rosanna, we're going to start with you. This is also on education. 2 more issues. There are 2 questions here. How do we get more students interested in teaching, becoming teachers, especially in a state where the pay lags and the budget has been cut so deeply? And number 2, how do we prevent teachers from leaving the state to seek higher paying jobs elsewhere?
Thank you for that question. In regards to teachers and the salary, what's happening with, when I talk to educators, when I talk to teachers, what they're telling me is that they're not getting enough money, that their salary is low, and someone had mentioned that's a choice on the local level. But you have to think about the funding that is going to our schools is low. So so school districts have to look at how to pay for everything, not only salaries, but for all the services that we provide for our children. So when it comes to salary, we do need to put more money into our school districts, because it's important that we keep our educators there. And I'm not only talking about teachers, I'm talking about all the support staff. In regards to addressing the teachers that are leaving our state, it's because they have to work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, because their salary is very low. So how we can do that is twofold. First is to provide more funding to our schools, and the second is to have a more a suggestion, because I don't want to be big brother in that regard, but to have more services and more communication between districts. And I know that's happening, but I think it's important that we continue to do that.
Obviously, salaries is a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it. Now, like I said, I'm tired of working in a broken system. And part of that broken system is that in education, really within the last 10, 15 years, we've gone down this rabbit hole of driving everything we do with a standardized test score. We have to break that cycle. We have to get it so that a teacher's job is not the pursuit of an average test score, but it's actually about educating children, because that's the reason that we got into the job. That's what we love to do. That's what we want to do. But that's not what we get to do these days. So yes, salary is a big part of it, but it's making an environment where we go to work every day and we're there to support and teach the kids, not just get a magic test score aligned to some national set of standards. We have to break that cycle.
Chris, how long have you been a teacher?
I'm going on my 19th year.
You sorry?
That's an interesting question. No, I love my job when I get to do my job. I don't love the rest of it, and I certainly can't pay my bills. So if you ask me if I had it to do over again, would I have gone into industry and then gotten my teaching kick somewhere else? The reality is, yes. But I'd have to get my teaching kick in somewhere.
Shelley Keiss.
Well, I got a little twinkle in my eye up here, you know, because I started my career as a teacher, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I started at a school in South Carolina, an inner city school. I was a women's track coach and a women's volleyball coach, and I taught. I love the kids. It is awesome. It is hard. I spent Sunday afternoons doing lesson plans and turning them into my vice principal, who graded them. It was a tough job, but I loved it. But I was a military wife, and we moved around a lot. I took the National Teachers Exam, passed it, had reciprocity in South Carolina, Ohio, Virginia, Maryland, and every time I took a step forward, I took 2 steps back every time we moved. And so I started a business, and I had a mentor who said to me, do what you do well. What do you do? And I said, I teach. And he said, teach in a company, teach in a corporation. And I thought, wow, that's a really good idea. And you will find me in a lot of companies and a lot of corporations teaching, are you ready? Statistics and data analysis. It's so fun. So yes, it's tough. Maybe I didn't answer the question, but I told you how much I loved it.
So now I'm going to answer the question again, since you admitted you didn't answer it. Just the second part. How do we prevent teachers from leaving the state to heading off to places that pay them better?
One of the things that we do in industry is we do exit interviews. So we find out why they're leaving. I'd be very interested in the data that says, why are they leaving? If I talk to teachers who tell me I'm leaving because these kids are monsters, I don't get any support from the front office, I spend most of my time doing national tests, I'm not getting to teach my kids, then we have an issue. If they're saying, I'm leaving because of salary, let's do, so you brought it up, Dan, let's do a Pareto chart. Let's look at what are the reasons why people are leaving. Let's collect the data. Let's analyze it. Let's find out what the issues are, and let's address the issues instead of just jumping out there and saying teachers are leaving.
Okay.
All right, so I've obviously had quite a significant environment difference between public school in India and school in America. I came to America with advanced math, physics skills, and calculus skills at 9 years old. So, is it the quality of the education, or is it lack of accountability over the school districts and how they're spending your tax dollars? And is it making it to the classroom? The classroom, it should be the primary focus of our budget, right? School districts' primary focus, the first stop for the budget should be the classroom. The classroom, what I say is, classroom meaning teacher salary, classroom supplies. As a parent, I have a daughter that goes to a public school, and as a parent, I've received letters at the beginning of the school year from the teacher asking for additional supplies. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to jump in and figure out, well, why is the teacher asking for all these supplies that the school just got a ton of money? I think back to Proposition 123. They were screaming, teachers, teachers, teachers need money. Well, the majority of those funds that they got in Proposition 123 did not go to the teacher's salary. So we need to have a legislative bill that requires and mandates a specific percentage of the budget that the districts get that makes it to the classroom. Thank you.
Okay, moving away from education, and this next question is more LD2 centric. Pima and Santa Cruz County make up about 15% of the population in Arizona. Yet, the 2-year job growth projection from the State Office of Economic Opportunity saying we'll account for less than 9% of the new jobs. What's worse is that Santa Cruz County is projected to add just 76 jobs from 2017 to 2019. How can we improve that? Chris, we'll start with you.
This is an issue. And from the perspective of what can be done at the state level, it is about making sure that when we're talking about programs, education programs and infrastructure programs, that we actually have policies that reflect the way things work in Southern Arizona. So often what happens is that nobody representing Southern Arizona is in the rooms where those decisions get made, and the policies are constructed to meet the way government is structured in Maricopa County, not the way government is structured in Pima County, and particularly not the way government is structured in Santa Cruz County. So if we can get those things to mesh better, so that we can get Southern Arizona's workforce development and infrastructure priorities met at the state level, I think we will do a much better job of priming that economic engine.
Okay, this is something near and dear to my heart. So we do have a problem. As a matter of fact, right now down in Santa Cruz County, we have 12% unemployment. So I say this whenever I speak, we're in a bubble. We have 30% of people living below the poverty level in Nogales and 49% living below the poverty level in South Tucson. And here we are in Green Valley at 5%. Now, if you think about that, how important is it then for us to give folks a job? Let's get some jobs down here. I'm a member of the Business and Industry Council of JTED, which is vocational education. I've been on that council for about, I think this is my 6th year. And I recommended that what we need to do is we need to look at upcoming industries. So here's one for you. We are anticipating being short 120,000 aerospace technicians. 120,000. What are we trying to do here in Pima County? Aerospace. We need aerospace technicians. I recommended that we start a drone program, that we put it in Santa Cruz County, we put it in the JTED, and we give our children in our JTED programs the opportunity to become certified as drone pilots and to become knowledgeable in the aerospace technology of drones.
So I believe there's 2 bullets to this. One is retention of small businesses and to be able to get benefits so that they can grow to be competitive with larger businesses. Therefore, we got competition, we got capitalism going on. The other is education. Now, I'm an electrical engineer, and I don't know if you remember when Governor Ducey was going to most of the meet and greets, he would always ask this one question: how many are from out of state? And the majority of the people were raising their hands. And I can tell you, the workplace I work at, the DoD contractor, a lot of individuals are talents that are being brought in from out of state. So that means something is glaring out here: education. If we don't fix the education issue, we're not going to be able to fill the kind of skill sets that they're trying to fill, and they end up bringing from out of state. Well, so we gotta fix the example, the JTED program, the hands-on experience, so that the children who are graduating out of high school, they're able to choose whether the JTED program encourages them to get back into the theory and the books, or go from learning from the hands-on experience with the technology and the labs, that they may just want to go get a professional certificate and join the workforce. So we need to fix that problem, and we certainly need to grow that. Thank you.
Economic development is key. And so, what I heard from the question is how do we look at, like growing our economic development? How are we going to grow our jobs? How are we going to get more employment centers, outside of Maricopa County? And one of the things that was discussed on the floor this last session was to continue the Arizona Commerce Authority, the ACA. And there was a lot of pushback, and not only from one caucus, but both of us actually stood up and questioned, what has the ACA done for us in the state of Arizona? So a lot of the concerns is nothing is really being done outside of Maricopa County and part of Pima County. So one of the things that happened from that is there is a portion of the ACA that actually addresses rural communities especially. And so one of the things that was very refreshing was that the Economic Development Committee through the Green Valley Settlement, the Chamber of Commerce, actually asked, could you ask somebody to come and talk? And what the ACA person did was actually talked about small businesses, but they said there are possibilities of grants and possibilities of working together to bring in more jobs, especially in rural Arizona. And when I say rural Arizona, that means not only Pima County, but Santa Cruz County, but the other counties that are outside of Maricopa.
Hey, Roseanne, I want to follow up a little bit, because this figure that Manny quoted puts Santa Cruz County rock bottom in Arizona for jobs. And let me repeat that number, 76, that is not a typo, jobs in Santa Cruz County from 2017 to 2019. That is abysmal. And my question is, you say it can bring jobs. What type of jobs, what type of industry would come down to Santa Cruz County?
One of the things and thank you for the question, one of the things that can be addressed in Santa Cruz County is more of the trade and commerce. There is so many trucks and trains that are coming over our border. So one of the things that I've been having discussions with is the Santa Cruz County Provisional College, and bringing more of, skilled labor jobs, as opposed to not all our students are going to go to the universities, but to have those programs, those apprentice programs that can bring jobs, because there is potential jobs in Santa Cruz County, but they are looking for the workers that are not trained at this time. So the partnership, not only with the state of Arizona, with our Mexican government, but actually bringing more of the ACA programs and Santa Cruz County, looking at those grants and those potential, education through the ACA to bring, especially small businesses, because there is individuals down there that want to start small businesses, but they don't have the opportunity now.
Do you think Representative Grijalva has done enough to bring jobs to Santa Cruz County?
That's an interesting question, Dan. I can't speak for the congressman.
No, but what have you seen? Have you seen the evidence of it?
Yes, I have, but I guess it's perception in regards to.
No, it's numbers, it's raw numbers, and they're not there. It's rock bottom. I don't even know if he can find Nogales. So,
I'm not going to speak for the congressman.
no, I think what it comes down to is that you are pretty much it, because on the federal level, we're not getting much help down there, and the community is pretty much dead. And so it's up to our state legislators to do it. That's my point.
Well, I respectfully disagree with you, because in regards to the provisional college, there is movement. I was able to go and visit with the provisional college, with the American Water Works Association, to actually talk about bringing potential jobs to the county, And also, there is businesses down there that need the employees, and so, we work towards that.
I appreciate that, thank you. Shelley Kais will take this one to you. This is about water. The State Bureau of Reclamation says there's a 49% chance of a water shortage on the Colorado River by 2020. And of course, that's where Arizona gets most of its water. Governor Ducey this year put forth a plan to secure future water supplies, and it's titled Securing Arizona's Water Future. Have you read that plan, and is it enough?
Yes, I have read the plan. And is it enough? No, because without water, we're not going to be here. And when I started today, I said I'm here because I love my home, I love my family, I love my friends, but without water, we're not going to be here. Water is a huge issue in our community, but it is one of the biggest issues down in Nogales. So let's go back down to Nogales and let's talk about the IOI. The IOI is the International Outflow Intercept, and here's the deal. We take raw sewage from Mexico, pump it up, process it in Rio Rico. We keep the effluent water. Now, is that good for us? Yes. Is it good for Mexico? Yes. Is it a federal issue? Yes. So, I understand budgets. I already told you that. So I found $44 million in a federal budget set for Nogales for the IOI in the 2018 budget. Why isn't this getting fixed? It's not getting fixed because we don't have people working at the state level saying we know there's federal money, it's coming to our state, where is it coming, how do we get this fixed, and what do we do about it? I am prepared, as I was in 2016, to address this issue. I promise you, I will in 2019.
All right, I grew up in Washington State. My dad's a fruit farmer there, and obviously one of the big issues of being a fruit farmer, can have water to water the orchard. So whenever the Yakima River would be lower in some years because there was enough snowfall, they would have to designate a local water district board and basically meter, right? Now, I'm not saying we need to be metering, but we certainly need to look at how we're going to address if there is a shortfall. As an engineer, you got to get the actual versus an assumption. So we certainly need to, as legislatures, go find out what is the capacity of the Colorado going into aquifer, and how much is the water, or how many years is the water sufficient. Typically 100 years is what is expected. 2020, that is a concern. But we certainly need to look at how we're going to manage water distribution, especially being that we're in the desert, and that's a primary need in our community.
A lot of those questions you just asked about capacity, and then even stemming over into tribal rights and that type of stuff is all in the governor's plan. Part of the question was, have you read it?
I have not read it.
Water sustainability. That is something that I have been addressing the 6 years that I've been at the State House. And I have the privilege of serving on what's called the Drought Contingency Plan. And that is, I'm a part of the steering committee, and there's 40 of us that actually come together every 2 weeks to address how we're going to look at the shortage on the river. And so when we talk the DCP, the Drought Contingency Plan, is something that is ongoing, and that we are going to come together as a state to address what is happening in Lake Mead. Now, yes, I have read the plan. Now, this steering committee, though, was actually established by the Arizona Department of Water Resource and the Central Arizona Project. And so when our goal of the steering committee is to get something in front of the legislature in January to address the lower basin, which is California, New Mexico, and Arizona. And that is what we're striving for, to look at when there is a shortage in the river, which will mean that the levels in Lake Mead will go down, that we need to look at the future of that. And so, again, water sustainability is very important. And if you have further questions, I'd be more than happy to talk to you, because I can go really into the weeds about this. Thank you.
And we do appreciate your leadership on water issues. You have been very, very involved. You mentioned Lake Mead, which is basically a bellwether for how things are going to go in coming years. And I mentioned this 49% chance of a water shortage in Colorado by 2020. As we go to 2022 and then 26, that percentage goes up. So you being very tied in with these issues, are you nervous about the future of our water resources in Arizona?
Well, thank you for that question, Dan. Actually, I'm very hopeful, because these conversations are not only looking at next year, but they're looking all the way up to 2026. And so when we have those discussions in regards to Lake Mead, at one point, when it gets to the level of 1,075 feet above sea level, that's when we do what's called the tier 1 shortages. And so we're going to be addressing that. So again, I think everybody needs to be part of that solution, and the steering committee is addressing those concerns. You mentioned several things, but the 4 things that we're actually dealing with is mitigation for agriculture. We're doing tribal ICS, which is intended created surplus. Then we're doing excess water, we're addressing excess water, and then the 4th thing we're doing is a conservation plan. So at this point, and not only are we as the steering committee meeting, but there are subcommittees for each of those topics.
Did you?
Okay. Yeah, I vaguely remember skimming over it, but I will have to admit that it got crowded out by how to explain factoring by grouping the kids who can't do fractions. So, the reality though is that water is, I mean, it's everything to us. But the one part that I would like to see focused on is we have sort of a patchwork of larger projects, but then also lots of people using private individual wells. And how do we mesh those efforts to maintain the sustainability and meet the needs without causing an upheaval between those rights and then those larger projects? And I don't know that I have an answer to it, but it is something that we have to address as we go forward. So that would be the area I would be most interested in focusing on.
Okay, we're going to go a little bit out of order now, and we're going to start with you, Rosanna, because I have a question that's a little bit different for you as an incumbent versus the other 3. The question for you is, the Arizona legislature is controlled by Republicans. As a Democrat, there have to be times that you feel pushed to the side. Why should we send you back to the legislature if you largely have no voice?
Thanks for the question, Dan. I respectfully disagree with you. I do have a voice. I stand up every day that I'm at the legislature, and I give you a voice. I bring ideas from Southern Arizona too, and I get those ideas from all of you. Now, I'm going to go back to the Red for Ed, where actually that really it went from a partisan conversation to a bipartisan conversation, because the people, the voters of the state of Arizona came to the state capitol and said, you need to listen to us. And I know that's one issue, but there's issues almost every day at the state capitol that we as legislatures address. And so I do bring a voice. I do make a difference. I work with my colleagues from across the aisle. We have much more that we agree upon than we disagree upon, and if we don't listen to each other, we don't get anywhere. And one of the things that I'm very delighted that happened was we started what's called the Rural Caucus, and that is legislators that actually do not represent Maricopa or Pima County. And we've come together at bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats sitting together and talking about issues that impact the state of Arizona. Now, and I can bring a voice to that table, and I can bring a voice at the state floor.
Thank you. Then we'll have a slightly different question. We'll start with you, Shelley Keiss. Again, Arizona legislature controlled by the Republican Party. If you get there, do you think on occasion the Democrat might have a good idea?
Absolutely. On many occasions, Democrats have good ideas. I am running for the people. And so I am a Republican. I am fiscally conservative. I do believe in limited government. But if we don't start working across the aisle, we're not going to get things done. But here's what we can't do. We can't go and say, our Republican colleagues are Nazis. And that's what my opponent did in 2016. Because, you know, when you are calling names, people don't want to work with you. And when you're writing on Facebook, their capital R lies, comma, damn lies, yeah, that doesn't make people want to work with you. So, do Democrats have good ideas? Absolutely. Do Republicans have good ideas? Absolutely. Everybody has good ideas. Let's listen to everyone. Let's work together. And I'm here to say today that if there's a Democrat that's working there in January of 2019 with me that has a really good idea, come and see me, because we're going to put that into legislation and we're going to get it done. Because if it serves the people of LD2, that's what we're there to do.
Obviously, being an engineer and not having been a career politician, problem solving, that's a nonpartisan viewpoint. Listening to our district residents' issues and figuring out how to resolve it. Obviously, back in 2016, I had a significant influence in the ability to write HB 2050. I'm endorsed by many of the House of Representatives and senators. In fact, Senator Gail Griffin is one of my close friends, and I certainly will leverage my relationships and associations with those who I trust, have common values, to help get enough support to be able to bring an ability to bring our bills to the level where it makes it to Governor Ducey for signing. That is an influence with other Republican House of Representatives and senators. I believe that influence is very important, because that is what it's about. You want representatives that can go up there and help solve your problem, and as well as having enough influence with the majority votes that go on in the Capitol, because that is what's going to help get your voice to the Capitol.
So everybody who goes to the legislature gets a check that they get to play. Now, if you serve in the majority, as I did, you get more than one. You get two. If you're in a leadership position, you might end up with a lot more. But everybody has a vote on the budget. And that's basically the bargaining chip that you go to the legislature with, because that's its primary job. It's not Democrat, Republican that causes the problem. It is that most of the Democratic representatives, and for that matter the senators, show up on the first day of session and pretty much turn in their chip, because they say, we're not going to vote for the budget. Doesn't matter how good it is, it's a Republican budget, and we're not going to let the Republicans win on any particular issue, so we're not voting for the budget. And thereby giving up their chip, they lose leverage in the conversations that come on. Now, I'm not suggesting that it would magically change if they decided to vote on the budget and all the priorities would get passed. I'm not suggesting that at all, but at least there would be more involvement in the conversation. But to be fair, as far as the leadership of either body goes, some strides need to be made to set a tone that is a little bit more inclusive than is currently the case. But at the end of the day, If you go up and, as Shelley said, if you call names and then turn in your chip, you're not gonna be part of the conversation.
Ken, let's talk a little bit about infrastructure and, back down to Nogales and Santa Cruz County. Now that ADOT has secured funding for the overhaul of State Route 189, what do you see as the next most pressing state-led infrastructure project in Santa Cruz County? For the audience, State Route 189 connects the Mariposa Port of Entry with Interstate 19. And as been mentioned, international trade is very important to the community. Anthony, we'll start with you.
I think we should be able to obviously improve the transportation system and the ability to bring trades through more efficiently. I believe those are very important, especially for job opportunities, one, in that area. And those definitely require an agreement between the federal and state entities, because we are along the international border. And so there could be opportunities of federal grants as well as state involvement. Governor Ducey's been strong on supporting being able to bring various business opportunities through the border, but in order for us to do that, we need to have an infrastructure capability in there, and that is part of a business growth. I believe the big argument we would have as representatives of this district that it would impact is this is a positive for the entire state. I believe that is the specific argument we would need to make, because we would need to influence the rest of the representatives that are there, that are at the table voting to support it.
I was looking for a specific project or area that requires it.
So, there's various areas, Aravaca, Sassabee is one of the areas that I think it could be improved as another port of entry. Nogales is there, but we need to improve the ability to more efficiently, less time, to be able to bring in agriculture or anything like that through there. Then those are the things, those are infrastructure related, because we would need to improve those, because we can't use as is presently to be able to improve the southern Arizona, Santa Cruz economy without doing those things. That is a primary financial or economic opportunity for Santa Cruz.
Rosanna, what are your thoughts?
Thank you for the question, I appreciate that. In regards to State Route 189 Mariposa Road, I was very delighted that there was not only state funding, but federal funding to actually look at phase 1 and phase 2 of that project. And that is, just going to be moving, my understanding is next year. So I'm very pleased with that. But another thing, that there was a piece of legislation this last session that was actually addressing phase 3, which what didn't really get, it was stripped of the most important part of that. And phase 3 actually addresses the frontage road between 2 exits. And why is it very important to us, ladies and gentlemen, is when we talk about trade and commerce, that we do have a safe frontage road and for the trucks to actually come through the border. So that is something that hopefully will be addressed. I am the chairman of Transportation Infrastructure. Actually, we have continued that conversation in regards to phase 3. But also, I wanted to address that the American Society of Civil Engineers has graded the state of Arizona for the infrastructure. We are C's and D's, ladies and gentlemen. And so there is a lot of projects that are out there that we need to address for infrastructure. And it begins with the legislative district 2, phase 3 of that, and also the east-west corridor, the Sonora corridor that I can talk to you about if you have questions. Thank you.
So, as specific projects, one of the things that is that you have to constantly remind folks up in Maricopa as we're doing budgets is the issue with Santa Cruz County in particular, in that because of the port of entry and because of the traffic that comes across there, the infrastructure needs so far outweigh the ability of the local population to sustain and maintain those infrastructure needs. But to the point of specific projects, obviously the international outflow interceptor is something that has to be addressed. That project has to be addressed. Representative Gabaldon mentioned that third part of the SR 189 and the connection to I-19. And basically, what's happened is the funding has been in place, and I was happy to be able to push to help get that into the budget in 2016. But what it's basically doing is moving the parking lot north, right? And so there was a bill, as she mentioned, in front of the legislature. And this goes down to that issue with them not understanding the way things work in other parts of the county. All of the folks in Santa Cruz County came up with a solution to provide funding for that, but the Trucking Association stomped on it. And there was nobody in the legislature that had the leverage to move that issue forward past the Trucking Association to get the problem resolved. So that's a key part of it as well.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say Ruby Road. I'm just gonna come right out and say Ruby Road. I think everybody I talked to down there says you gotta do something about Ruby Road. And so I'm gonna start there, so there's my answer. But I wanna go on, and I wanna go back to the IOI. Because I was at the Pima County Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, and Chairman Elias said that the Santa Cruz River is the blood life of this community. And he's right. And if we have a breach of the IOI, and we have high E. coli levels in the Santa Cruz River, what happens? We have a big issue. So we have multiple issues that we need to address, and we do have infrastructure issues. We have them all over the country. I travel all over the country. Everybody talks how bad Pima County roads are. You will shake your liver loose driving down 18th Street in Washington, D.C. So there are places where roads are bad everywhere. But that doesn't mean that we don't send a voice to Phoenix to say, hey, everybody loves tomatoes, and if you want tomatoes coming across that border, then we've got to have some funding to build our infrastructure and secure our community.
Thank you. Rosanna, we'll start off with you on this next question. What key agencies or people in Santa Cruz County would you work with, or do you work with, to improve the quality of life there?
Thank you for that question. In regards to Santa Cruz County, there is a Santa Cruz County collaborative group that actually meets, and it started out with it being like a home health care, and it grew to other non-profits, state agencies, or anyone who is looking for quality of life for our community. So that is one I guess group or agency that I work with. Also, I encourage the Department of Health Services to go down to Santa Cruz County as much as possible, the DES, so on and so forth. So when I'm asked to go down and actually speak to these different groups, or people reach out to me, these groups are like the Circle of Peace. There is like the Senior Center. There is Santa Cruz County, City of Nogales. All of those agencies or those municipalities I work with in regards to Santa Cruz County, because Santa Cruz County is something that I really enjoy going down. That is part of my legislative district that I really enjoy representing. And so to answer your question there is numerous agencies, groups, organizations, state agencies that I actually work with for the benefit or the quality of life of Santa Cruz County citizens.
Chris?
So will work with anyone. Have worked with, obviously, have worked with the Fresh Produce Association, the Port Authority, the Provisional Community College, as well as the governmental jurisdictions down there themselves. When I served in the legislature, the vast majority of the bills that I ran were to solve specific problems. Two of those were specific to Santa Cruz County. One was a flood control issue in Patagonia. And so I worked very closely with the actual government in the town of Patagonia and brought the Maricopa County Flood Control Plane and the Pima County Flood Control managers to the table to resolve a solution for them. One of the other issues was the Provisional Community College. We have orphaned 2 provisional community college districts in statute, one being in Santa Cruz. And so basically it's kind of stuck in limbo. And one of the issues was trying to find them a path forward as we go through. So I worked with their board to sort of get a path forward. It's not done yet, and this is a crucial issue that is going to come up in the next couple of legislative sessions is how do we find those 2 provisional community college systems a path forward?
Well, I haven't been elected, so I'm down there campaigning, but I want you to know that on Sunday afternoon, Jim and my husband, Jim and I, were at the Nogales VFW 2066. And we did the Gold Star family ceremony with them. And prior to that, earlier in the week, I had been with the Brokers Association. And one of the things I'm working on right now is I'm working on wait time for legal trade and commerce. We believe that we have a solution that has a technology piece which we will be demonstrating, which will give the CBP the option to allow certified trucks to pass through the Port of Mariposa and thereby reduce the wait time. We are proposing that. We are right now in negotiations with that, talking about coming down and showing the technology solution. So I am working with folks. I also work with the Gospel Rescue Mission. And I am down in Santa Cruz County all the time. So I would encourage you to go to my Facebook, because rather than me try to tell you everything from Mexican Independence Day to various places, you'll see where I have worked down in Santa Cruz County.
So I've had the privilege of basically meeting Arizona workforce, the Chamber, Santa Cruz Chamber, Nogales Chamber folks, and City of Nogales, Mayor and staff there. And certainly, I'm a candidate, so obviously as an elected official, those are some of the insights on who to work with to help resolve issues such as trade. I think there's a brilliant opportunity to create a tech school down there, because right across the border in Nogales, there's a lot of U.S. citizens that go there because they don't have as many stringent rules as far as the requirements of extracurricular requirements rather than the direct tech-related courses. Why they're going across the border to do it? Why don't we set up a technology school on the American side? And I think that would be a great opportunity. That's a venture opportunity for the Nogales area, and I think that is a huge win for Santa Cruz to produce something like that in Santa Cruz County.
Okay, thank you. Chris, we'll start with you on this one. This is about taxes. SB 1147 failed to make it through the state legislature earlier this year. It would have allowed the Pima County Board of Supervisors to impose a sales tax to fix the roads on a majority vote rather than on a unanimous vote. they likely, the county likely will go after this legislation again in the new session. Would you support this?
So let me clarify. I believe it is to refer to the voters' sales tax, not impose it themselves,
Correct.
correct?
That's
Because
correct.
that is a key difference. Because, I mean, if you look at my sign over there, it says local control. So I do actually believe in local control. So would I support the ability of a board of supervisors to refer to the taxpayers? I mean, to the voters on initiative? Yes. Would I support them being able to levy it themselves? Absolutely not. So the answer is yes.
Okay, but the wrinkle here is that it would no longer require a unanimous.
Unanimous vote, it would be on a majority vote, yes.
And you would
I would
say that
support
that'd be
that,
okay?
yes.
Okay.
So I told you that I went to the Pima County Board of Supervisors yesterday, and I'm not often at a loss for words, but I am. I was very concerned with what I saw. I actually saw one of the Board of Supervisors dress down another Board of Supervisor publicly. Now, as I look around the room, I'm betting a lot of you have had careers in business, and you're involved in volunteer organizations. And one thing we all know is that you praise publicly and you reprimand privately. I don't think we're ever going to get a 5-0 vote on that board, ever. That worries me, because sometimes there are things that are good for the community, and we're not going to get there. So I want to tag along with what Chris said, because he and I have discussed this before. Do I think that the Board of Supervisors should be able to put a vote to the citizens? Yes. Do I think that they will ever get a 5-0 vote? No, I don't.
But if it comes up in the legislature this next year, would you support them not needing a unanimous vote?
I think I would, because I've been there. And until you've been there, I don't think you can speak to that issue. We are never going to get a 5-0 vote out of that group.
Well, maybe we'll get a 5-0 vote after 2020. Just kidding.
That's an announcement you're running? Because you've already given up here. I think the history of the Pima County Board of Supervisors is a significant concern. The trustability is simply not there. Getting the legislatures to write a bill to basically allow a control function as far as raising taxes by the Board of Supervisors is a concern. It doesn't go to the voters. I think unanimous vote is important, maybe after 2020, but I believe that that's a safety measure, is what it looks like to me. If it was a majority vote, we would have a significant concern, because a majority vote is Democrat, and it may not reflect on conservative values or the hardworking citizens' values in a way that would be acceptable.
Taxes. I have to tell you that so many bills come in front of us at the House and the Senate regarding taxes. In regards to this bill I'm going to answer your question first. Would I support, or would I vote for this? I'm going to be very clear, ladies and gentlemen, because language is so key. The vocabulary on that legislation is so key. So I really can't answer that question unless I see that piece of legislation in front of me. So in regards to local control, I serve on the local and international affairs committee. And we have several bills that come in front of us that actually impact our municipalities and counties. And I have to say that, more and more of these bills that are coming in front of us does say that the state wants to take away local control, and I will vote against that. And again, it really depends on that language.
Thank you. Next question. Shelley, we'll start off with you. A significant segment of the population in LD2 is Spanish speaking. Are you a Spanish speaker? And if not, how would you connect with constituents who aren't comfortable with English?
Buenos días, buenas noches. Me llamo Shelley Kais. Yo soy de Panamá. Estoy coreando por la oficina de senadora. Muchas gracias.
Pero estamos en los Estados Unidos, so what do you think? Do you think they should be learning English perhaps?
That is exactly what Dan just said, but we're in the United States. I have walked in neighborhoods in Nogales, knocked on doors, started speaking Spanish, and then they wanted to try their English. People in Legislative District 2 do want to speak English. They do want to be part of our community. They do want to join with us. And we are living in a community that is part Hispanic and is part Anglo. And you know what? What fun have we had, all of us, learning about the pottery, the bakery, the food. I keep going back to the bakery. It's just a great opportunity for us in this legislative district. And I will work with all of the people. I will use my Spanish, which sometimes is not so good. I learned Spanish because I was raised in Panama. And although I went to an English-speaking school, many of my friends spoke Spanish and will still speak Spanish to me today. And so I've learned that this community welcomes and embraces my Spanish. I went on the radio in Nogales a couple of days ago, and I spoke Spanish, and I don't think they're the same yet. But you know, I'm sure that if I said anything wrong, they will be graceful and give me a pass. Thank you.
All right, so, obviously I don't speak Spanish. No habla español, señor. But I grew up in a Hispanic culture, Rancho, Washington, which is the majority of migrants that come from Mexico to basically harvest and pick fruit and make a lot of money from it, and then go to Mexico and spend like kings, right? And then come back up to Mexico. That's actually their majority of their. It's actually their job. That's what they want to do. They're interested in doing that. I've got many friends that I grew up in Granger. In fact, the basketball team is all Hispanic, and then one's all Indian. But I mean, obviously, I transitioned from India to America, and I spoke the language of Kannada, wrote in Sanskrit, and had to learn the English. Had to learn the American culture from my parents and from Christian values, and those helped me to bridge from one world to the other. And I think there's a way that we can actually communicate with the Spanish-speaking folks in our district, especially with having translators and stuff. And that's pretty important because we need to be able to connect with them.
I understand about 90% of people when they speak Spanish to me. And when I speak back, I get a bit embarrassed because I understand, but the words don't come. But I do get along, and I can communicate with someone who is speaking Spanish to me. In regards to being bilingual, that's the way our country has been established. We, as immigrants, have come with a second language, and we've learned English. And that's how we thrive as a country, is being able to speak languages of the community around. So when I represent Legislative District 2, I do attempt to speak Spanish. I do get by, and people are very patient with me, and I'm very glad about that. But again, when it comes to the culture, yes, we do have, our population is increasing in the Latinos, but I represent everyone, and so it is an honor to be able to communicate with Spanish speakers. But I do have other constituents that speak other languages other than Spanish, and when I encounter them, I try very hard to find an interpreter to take with me.
Rosanna, you've been down there, for 6 years representing that area, and I just want to know, if among those who are more comfortable in Spanish than English, what is their interest and understanding of exactly what happens at the legislature? Do they get it, or does the language barrier just kind of allow that to cut themselves off from what's happening there?
Dan, thank you for that question. The people that I encounter that do speak the second language, Spanish or other language, is they are they're newly citizens, and they're excited, and the process of being a citizen is so interesting to them. So they have a lot of questions about, what do you mean being a state representative? And so yes, there is a lot of inquiries, there is a lot of I guess they want to know more, and so I do encounter that. And they also talk about my relationships. Who do you work with? What is our local government? Are you working with our local elected officials? So yes, when I do encounter them, it is a very joyful and very delightful conversation.
Senora Martin is very disappointed in me. She was my high school Spanish teacher, and no, I don't speak it. Understand if I'm following along, paying really close attention, and there's some cues in there. So basically, I just hang out with Shelley because she does. But as I said, I run a math credit recovery program at Amphi High, so about a third of my students don't speak English. They or don't speak it fluently. And languages from all over the world. A lot of them Spanish, but I managed to get through quadratics with them, so I think I'll be okay.
And Chris, you actually were notable in 2014 when you were running for being able to connect with that community, even though you didn't speak the language. How did you do it? What were some of the highlights of those connections? How'd you make it happen?
I'm just myself. I don't ever put on pretenses. And I think that was appreciated. I do not walk into a room and attempt to pretend things that I'm not. I don't speak Spanish. I wasn't going to pretend to do it. I've lived here all of my life in southern Arizona. I have a history with the region, and so we could connect on that level. It was just a matter of not putting on pretenses.
Okay, this is going to be our last question, and Anthony, we will start with you. Give us your top 2 or 3 issues that you would like to tackle when you go to the legislature. What are your priorities? What's important